The diplomatic chamber aboard the Valkyrie flagship glowed with an eerie blue light. Captain Taman stood with his hands clasped behind his back, watching the alien rulers circle around him like predators examining wounded prey. His crew stood beside him in their crisp gray uniforms. Commander Hyejin kept her face blank, though her jaw was tight. Lieutenant Daehyun stared straight ahead, refusing to look at the aliens who were openly laughing at them. Ensign Minji shifted her weight nervously, her fingers twitching at her sides. The Valkyrie were tall creatures, almost 3 meters high, with skin that looked like frosted glass. Light pulsed beneath their translucent flesh in colors that shifted from blue to purple to green. They wore no clothes, needing none, as their bodies seemed to be made of living energy contained in a crystalline shell. Their eyes were solid white orbs that somehow could still express emotions, and right now, those emotions were contempt and amusement. Lord Velcran Prime glided forward on legs that barely seemed to touch the floor. He was the supreme commander of the Valkyrie military forces, ruler of 17 star systems, and destroyer of countless civilizations that had refused to bow before him. His voice came out like wind chimes, musical but cold. "So these are the humans," he said, his words translated by the universal device attached to Taman's collar. "Tell me, Captain Taman, is that really your warship docked outside? That tiny gray box of metal and rivets?" Several Valkyrie courtiers laughed. One of them, a female with particularly bright purple energy flowing through her body, spoke up. "My lord, I thought they were bringing us a cargo hauler by mistake. Surely that cannot be a military vessel." Taman remained silent. He had learned long ago that sometimes the best response was no response at all. His orders from Earth had been clear. Go to the meeting. Listen to their demands. Do not reveal humanity's true capabilities. Let them think humans were weak and primitive. Velcran Prime walked over to a massive viewing window that showed the space outside. The Valkyrie flagship, called Eternal Radiance, was enormous. 3 kilometers long, shaped like a crystal sphere, it pulsed with the same bioluminescent energy as its creators. Weapons ports lined its hull, each one capable of firing energy beams that could slice through asteroids. Its shields were always active, a shimmering barrier of pure force that surrounded the ship like a soap bubble made of light. Next to this magnificent vessel, the human ship looked almost pathetic. The EDFS Indomitable was only 800 meters long, built from gray titanium and carbon composites. It had sharp angles and flat surfaces, clearly constructed rather than grown. Rails ran along its sides, mounted with what appeared to be primitive cannon. Tubes stuck out from its hull, obviously missile launchers. The ship had no glow, no shimmer, no elegance. It looked like something built in a factory by workers with hammers and welding torches. "Your people use kinetic weapons," Velcran Prime said, not bothering to hide his disgust. "Bullets and explosives, chemical reactions and solid projectiles. Captain, my people abandoned such crude technology 3,000 years ago. We harness pure energy now. We shape force itself into weapons. And you come here with metal tubes that throw rocks?" Taman finally spoke, his voice calm and measured. "Our weapons serve our purposes, Lord Velcran Prime." "Your purposes," the Valkyrie leader repeated, turning away from the window. "Let me tell you what your new purpose will be. Humanity will submit to Valkyrie rule. You will provide tribute, resources, technology, labor, whatever we require. In return, we will allow your species to continue existing." Commander Hyejin tensed beside Taman. He could feel her anger radiating like heat, but she remained silent. "Good. The plan required patience. And if we refuse?" Taman asked. Velcran Prime's laugh sounded like breaking glass. "Refuse, Captain? Look at your ship. Look at mine. You have 1 vessel. I have 50 ships in my immediate fleet. The Valkyrie Empire spans 17 star systems. We have conquered 43 different species. Some submitted peacefully, others chose to fight. Those species no longer exist. Which category would humanity like to join?" Taman met the alien's white eyes without flinching. "We would like a 3rd category, the category of equals who negotiate in good faith." The entire chamber fell silent. Then the Valkyrie began laughing again, louder this time. Velcran Prime laughed hardest of all, his body flashing bright colors as his amusement grew. "Equals," he finally managed to say. "You think humanity is equal to the Valkyrie Empire? You travel between stars at a fraction of our speed. Your weapons are relics. Your shields are non-existent. Your ships are built from dumb matter. Captain Taman, you are not our equals. You are barely worth conquering. except that your planet has resources we desire." He glided closer until he stood directly in front of Taman. The alien towered over the human captain by more than a meter. "I will give your species 1 week, 7 of your Earth days. At the end of that time, you will send a message of complete and unconditional surrender, or I will personally lead a fleet to your homeworld and demonstrate what happens to species that defy the Velkari Empire." Taman nodded slowly. "I will relay your message to my superiors. See that you do." Velkran Prime gestured and the chamber doors opened. "You are dismissed. Return to your quaint little ship and carry my words to your leaders. The Velkari have spoken." As the human delegation walked toward the exit, Lieutenant Daehyun whispered to Hyejin, "I want to punch him so badly." "Get in line," she whispered back. They reached their shuttle, a small craft that would ferry them back to the Indomitable. As they boarded and sealed the airlock, Ensign Minji finally let out a long breath. "That was the most difficult hour of my life. Just standing there while they mocked everything we are." Taman sat in the pilot's chair and began the launch sequence. "They see what we want them to see. Remember that." The shuttle detached from the eternal radiance and began its short journey across the void. Through the viewport, they could see the massive Velkari flagship in all its glory, surrounded by its escort fleet. Each ship was a work of art, elegant and deadly, pulsing with power. They docked with the Indomitable, and as soon as the inner airlock opened, the atmosphere changed. The ship's crew snapped to attention, but there was no fear in their eyes. They had been watching the meeting through Minji's hidden camera feed. They had heard every insult, every threat, every laugh. Taman walked onto his bridge and the command crew immediately gathered around him. His tactical officer pulled up displays showing the Velkari fleet's positions. His chief engineer brought up schematics of their own ship's systems. His science officer had been analyzing the Velkari vessel's energy signatures. "Report," Taman said, settling into his command chair. Hyejin spoke first. "The Velkari have no idea what they're dealing with. They think our hull is simple titanium. They don't know about the metamaterials layered beneath. They think our reactors are conventional fusion. They don't detect the antimatter cores. They see missile tubes and rail guns, but they have no concept of the velocities we can achieve." Daehyun added, "I monitored their scanning attempts while we were aboard. Their sensors are optimized for energy signatures. They can barely detect our ship's power output because we're running cold. Everything is shielded. The Indomitable looks like a museum piece to them because that's exactly what we designed her to look like." "Weapon status?" Taman asked. The tactical officer smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. "All systems nominal, Captain. The EMP cannon is charged and ready. Drone bays are fully loaded. Railguns are operational, and the relativistic kill vehicles are standing by. They won't know what hit them." Taman nodded. "Good, but we're not engaging yet. Helm, set course for Earth, standard cruise speed. Let them think we're running home to tell our leaders the scary aliens made threats." As the Indomitable turned and began accelerating away from the Velkari fleet, Minji noticed something on her sensors. "Captain, I'm detecting new contacts. Multiple ships breaking formation from the main fleet. They're following us." Taman leaned forward. "How many?" 43 vessels, sir. It's the Crimson Fleet, Velkran Prime's personal armada." Hyejin looked at Taman. "They're not just following us. They're hunting us. They plan to tail us back to Earth and attack our homeworld." "Perfect," Taman said quietly. His crew turned to stare at him. Daehyun spoke up. "Captain, with all respect, how is this perfect? We're leading an enemy fleet directly to Earth." Taman pulled up a star chart showing their route home. He traced a line with his finger, and the path passed through a dense asteroid belt between 2 planets. The asteroids floated in space like sleeping giants, cold and dark and seemingly lifeless. "We're not going to Earth," Taman said. "Not directly. We're going here first." He tapped the asteroid belt. "To the Terran defense line." Hyejin's eyes widened as she understood. "The automated platforms. They've been completed? Finished 2 months ago," Taman confirmed. "Thousands of weapons platforms disguised as asteroids and mining stations. Railguns, missile batteries, laser arrays, all powered down and hidden. The Velkari will chase us straight into the trap, and they'll never see it coming because their sensors can't detect cold metal and rock." He stood and faced his crew. "For 6 months we've played the role of primitives. We let them laugh at us. We let them think they're superior." The Indomitable cut through space like a knife through water, its engines leaving a faint trail of particles that marked its path. Behind it, maintaining a steady distance of 50,000 kilometers, the Velkari Crimson Fleet followed in perfect formation. 43 ships, each one a masterpiece of alien engineering, each one glowing with barely contained energy. On the bridge of the human warship, Lieutenant Daehyun monitored the pursuit from his engineering station. Numbers scrolled across his screen showing power levels, fuel consumption, and structural integrity. Everything looked normal, but his heart hammered in his chest. They were 3 days into the journey, and the tension aboard the ship had become almost physical. "They're still maintaining distance," he reported to Captain Taman. "No change in formation. No sign they're preparing to attack." Taman sat in his command chair, his fingers drumming slowly on the armrest. He had barely slept since leaving the Velkari flagship. Commander Heejin had taken over twice to force him to rest, but even then he had only managed a few hours before returning to the bridge. "They're overconfident," Heejin said from her position at the tactical station. "They think we're running scared. They think they have all the time in the world to chase us down and destroy us." "Let them think that," Taman replied. "How long until we reach the defense line?" 18 hours at current speed," Heejin answered. She looked up from her console. "Captain, I have to ask, are you certain about this plan? We're leading them straight toward Earth's territory. If something goes wrong, if the platforms don't work as designed, we'll have given them a clear path to our homeworld." Taman understood her concern. It was the same concern that had been nagging at him for 3 days. The Terran defense line was new technology, barely tested, built in secret over 5 years. Thousands of weapons platforms hidden among asteroids, all connected by a quantum communication network, all waiting in silence for the activation codes. But what if something failed? What if the Velkari detected the platforms before they activated? What if their shields could withstand the attack after all? "I'm not certain," Taman admitted quietly. "But I trust Admiral Jiwan, and I trust the engineers who built those platforms. More importantly, I trust that humanity's survival depends on making the Velkari believe we're more dangerous than we actually are. Fear is a weapon too." Ensign Minji turned from her communication station. "Captain, incoming transmission from Earth. It's Admiral Jiwan. She's asking for a status update." "Put her through to my ready room." "Heejin, you have the bridge." Taman walked into the small office adjacent to the bridge and sealed the door. The view screen on his desk activated, showing the face of Admiral Jiwan. She was a woman in her 60s with gray hair pulled back in a tight bun and eyes that had seen too many conflicts. She had commanded Earth's defense forces for 20 years, and she had been the one who conceived the strategy of appearing weak while preparing for war. "Captain Taman," she said without preamble, "the Crimson Fleet is still following you?" "Yes, Admiral. 43 ships. They'll be in range of the defense line in 18 hours. Jiwan nodded slowly. "And you're certain they don't suspect the trap?" "Their behavior suggests overconfidence, not caution. They're maintaining pursuit speed but not attempting to close the distance. They want to follow us all the way to Earth." "Good." Jiwan leaned back in her chair. "Taman, I need to tell you something. The defense line isn't our only preparation. While you've been gone, Dr. Sung-ho completed the final calculations for the Stellar Lance." Taman felt a chill run down his spine. The Stellar Lance was a project so secret that even he had only heard rumors about it. "It's operational? It will be in 4 days. We've converted the asteroid series into a mass driver capable of launching projectiles at 90% of light speed. One shot from that weapon could destroy a planet." Taman stared at the screen. "Admiral, that's a doomsday weapon." "Yes," Jiwan agreed. "And we built it because we learned a hard lesson during first contact. The Velkari destroyed a trading outpost with 3 million beings aboard because that outpost refused to surrender. They did it casually, like someone swatting an insect. We realized then that we couldn't negotiate with an empire that saw other species as less than themselves." She leaned forward, her expression intense. "The Stellar Lance will never be used against a populated world. But the Velkari don't need to know that. They just need to believe we're crazy enough and desperate enough to use it. Fear will accomplish what diplomacy cannot." Taman understood the strategy, but it troubled him. Humanity was building weapons of mass destruction and pretending to be willing to use them. It was a dangerous game. What if they call our bluff? Then we pray the defense line is enough to make them reconsider, Jiwan said. "Captain, I'm not asking you to like this plan. I'm asking you to execute it. Can you do that?" "Yes, Admiral." "Good. When you reach the defense line, you're authorized to activate all platforms and engage the Crimson Fleet. Show them what humanity is capable of. Make them afraid. Make them doubt everything they think they know about us. The transmission ended. Taman sat alone in his ready room, thinking about the path that had brought them to this moment. 6 months ago, humanity had been excited about first contact with an alien civilization. They had prepared speeches about peace and cooperation and mutual understanding. Then they had watched the Velkari casually commit genocide, and everything changed. Earth's leaders made a decision that day. They would prepare for war while pretending to pursue peace. They would build weapons in secret while displaying old technology publicly. They would study the enemy while letting the enemy underestimate them. It was manipulation on a grand scale, and Taman wasn't entirely comfortable with it. But he also remembered the images of that trading outpost, the 3 million beings who died because they trusted the Velkari to negotiate fairly. He returned to the bridge. Hygiene status? No change. They're still following at a safe distance. Taman activated the ship-wide communication system. His voice would now be heard in every corridor, every room, every station aboard the Indomitable. All hands, this is the captain. In 18 hours we will engage the Velkari Crimson Fleet. I know you're all aware of what we're about to do, but I want to be clear about why we're doing it. The Velkari Empire believes humanity is weak. They believe our technology is primitive and our civilization is barely worth conquering. They think we'll surrender rather than fight. He paused, choosing his next words carefully. They're wrong. Humanity has survived ice ages, asteroid impacts, plagues, and wars. We survived because we're adaptable. We learn, we plan, we prepare, and when necessary, we fight with everything we have. The defense line represents 5 years of secret construction. Thousands of engineers and workers built those platforms. They did it in silence, working in the shadows so that when this moment came, we would be ready. In 18 hours, their work will be tested. The Velkari will learn that humanity doesn't surrender. We don't give up. And we don't forgive those who threaten our families. I'm proud to serve with each and every one of you. Whatever happens in the next day, know that you're fighting for Earth, for our children, for our future. Captain out. The bridge crew looked at him with expressions of determination. Dahyun spoke up. Captain, I've been running calculations. The antimatter reactors can handle a sustained battle for up to 6 hours before we need to reduce power. That should be more than enough time. And the weapons systems? Taman asked. Yejin pulled up a diagnostic display. All railguns operational. Missile tubes loaded. Drone bays ready. EMP cannon charged to full capacity. The Indomitable is ready for war. The hours crept by slowly. The crew ate meals at their stations, not wanting to leave their posts. Taman walked through the ship, visiting engineering, the weapons bays, the drone control center. He wanted the crew to see him, to know he was confident even if he felt fear gnawing at his insides. In the medical bay, he found Dr. Yuna preparing for casualties. She was a young woman, fresh from the academy, and this would be her first real combat situation. Her hands shook slightly as she organized surgical instruments. Dr. Yuna, Taman said gently. She jumped, then straightened. Captain, I'm just preparing for the wounded. Are you ready? She hesitated, then nodded. I've trained for this. I know what to do. But Captain, how do you handle the fear? How do you stay calm when you know people might die? Taman sat down on one of the medical beds. I don't stop being afraid. Fear is natural. It keeps us alive. The trick is not letting fear control your decisions. You act in spite of the fear, not in absence of it. What if I make a mistake? Then you learn from it and do better next time. That's all any of us can do. With 2 hours remaining before they reached the defense line, Taman returned to the bridge. The asteroid belt was now visible on the long-range sensors, a dense field of rocks and ice floating in the darkness. To the Velkari, it would look like a natural hazard, something to navigate around carefully. They had no idea it was a killing field ensign. Minji checked her console. Captain, the activation codes are ready to transmit. All platforms are responding to the quantum network. They're ready and waiting. Hold the codes, Taman ordered. Let the Velkari get deeper into the belt. I want them surrounded before we activate. The asteroid belt exploded with light and fury. Thousands of weapons platforms that had been sleeping in the darkness suddenly roared to life. What the Velkari had thought were simple rocks and ice chunks revealed themselves as carefully disguised killing machines. Hatches opened along surfaces that had looked natural moments before. Weapons emerged from hiding places that had been prepared years in advance. The first volley came from the magnetic accelerator cannons. These weapons used powerful electromagnets to launch solid projectiles at incredible speeds. The projectiles were simple chunks of tungsten, dense and heavy, but they moved at a significant fraction of the speed of light. At those velocities, even a small piece of metal carried devastating kinetic energy. 3 Valkyrie ships simply ceased to exist. The relativistic projectiles punched through their energy shields as if the shields weren't even there. The shields were designed to deflect energy beams and disperse heat, but they offered no protection against solid matter traveling at such speeds. The tungsten rounds passed through the crystalline hulls, and the kinetic energy of the impacts released more power than nuclear weapons. The ships didn't explode so much as they vaporized, turning into clouds of superheated gas and debris. Aboard the Domination's Edge, Lord Velcrin Prime watched in horror as 3 of his ships disappeared from his tactical display. Around him, his officers shouted in confusion and alarm. The bridge, which had been calm and confident moments before, descended into chaos. "What happened?" Velcrin Prime demanded. "Where did those weapons come from?" His sensor officer worked frantically at his console, his crystalline fingers moving in a blur. "My lord, the asteroids are not asteroids. They're weapons platforms. Thousands of them. They're all around us. We're surrounded." "Impossible," Velcrin Prime hissed. "Our sensors would have detected them. They were powered down completely. No energy signatures, just cold metal and rock. Our sensors are designed to detect energy sources, not inert matter." The second wave arrived before Velcrin Prime could respond. Missile swarms erupted from hidden launch bays throughout the asteroid belt. Thousands of missiles, each one guided by its own artificial intelligence. Each one coordinating with all the others through quantum-entangled communication systems. They moved in patterns that seemed almost alive, dodging and weaving through space, avoiding point defense fire, seeking weak points in the Valkyrie formation. The Crimson Fleet's defensive systems engaged. Energy beams lanced out, destroying hundreds of missiles. But for every missile destroyed, 10 more took its path. The swarm was too dense, too numerous, too coordinated. Missiles began striking home. Each one carried a shaped nuclear charge designed to penetrate armor before detonating. Explosions rippled across the Valkyrie fleet. Ships that had survived the first attack now found their hulls breached, their internal systems exposed to vacuum, their crews dying as atmosphere vented into space. "Return fire!" Velcrin Prime screamed. "Destroy those platforms. Kill them all." The Crimson Fleet began shooting back, their energy weapons lighting up the asteroid belt with brilliant beams of concentrated power. They scored hits on several platforms, destroying them in flashes of molten metal and shattered rock. But for every platform they destroyed, a dozen more remained operational. The humans had built redundancy into their defense network, knowing that some platforms would be lost in the initial exchange. Aboard the Indomitable, Captain Taman watched the battle unfold on his tactical display. Each icon represented a ship or platform. Each flash of red meant a kill. Each yellow indicator showed damage. The Valkyrie were fighting back hard, but they were in a defensive position now, reacting instead of acting. "Daehyun, status on our reactors?" Taman called out. "Running at 120% capacity," the engineer replied. "We can maintain this for another 5 hours before we need to reduce power." "Hyejin, deploy the drone fighters." Commander Hyejin's fingers danced across her tactical console. "Deploying all drone bays now." Along the sides of the Indomitable, hatches opened and 10,000 small craft poured out like angry insects from a disturbed nest. Each drone was no larger than a ground vehicle, painted black to blend with space, equipped with its own propulsion system and weapons. But their true strength came from their coordination. Through quantum entanglement, every drone was connected to every other drone, allowing them to act as a single unified intelligence. The drone swarm descended on the Valkyrie fleet like a plague. Individual drones were small and fragile, easy to destroy with a single shot. But there were so many of them, moving in such coordinated patterns that the Valkyrie point defense systems couldn't track them all. Drones landed on ship hulls and began cutting through armor with plasma torches. They targeted weapon emplacements, destroying cannons and missile tubes. They found engine ports and flew inside, sabotaging propulsion systems from within. A Valkyrie cruiser tried to shake off the drones by spinning rapidly, but the maneuver only exposed different parts of its hull to attack. Drones swarmed over it like ants on a piece of candy, cutting, burning, destroying. Within minutes, the cruiser's weapons went offline, then its engines, then its life support. Lord Velcran Prime watched his fleet dying around him. In less than 10 minutes of combat, he had lost 15 ships with more taking critical damage. His tactical display, which should have shown a dominant force crushing a primitive enemy, instead showed disaster unfolding in real time. "We need to withdraw," his second-in-command said urgently. "My lord, we cannot win this engagement." "The humans have trapped us." "No," Velcran Prime snarled. "We are the Velkari Empire. We do not retreat from primitives with metal tubes and chemical explosives. Focus all fire on the human ship. If we destroy their command vessel, perhaps the automated platforms will cease functioning." It was a reasonable tactical assumption, but it was wrong. The defense line operated independently once activated, requiring no input from the Indomitable. But Velcran Prime didn't know that, and his ignorance led him to make a fatal mistake. The Crimson Fleet redirected its fire toward the Indomitable, concentrating dozens of energy beams on the human warship. The beams struck the ship's hull with enough power to melt through solid rock, enough heat to vaporize titanium. But the hull didn't melt. The Indomitable's armor wasn't simple titanium. Beneath the gray exterior lay layers of metamaterials, artificial substances with properties that didn't exist in nature. These materials could absorb and disperse energy in ways that seemed to violate physics. The Velkari beams hit the hull and their energy simply disappeared, converted into harmless heat and radiated away into space. Hull integrity holding at 98%, Daehyun reported with satisfaction. "Their weapons are barely scratching us." Taemin allowed himself a small smile. Humanity had spent 5 years preparing for this confrontation. They had studied Velkari technology, analyzed their weapons, and designed specific countermeasures. The metamaterial hull was expensive and difficult to produce, but it made the Indomitable nearly immune to energy weapons. Hyejin, target the flagship. Prepare the EMP cannon. The EMP cannon was the Indomitable's most secret weapon. It generated a focused electromagnetic pulse powerful enough to disrupt electronic systems at extreme range. The Velkari, who relied entirely on energy-based technology, were particularly vulnerable to it. Their ships had no backup systems, no redundant controls, no way to operate if their primary systems failed. The Indomitable accelerated forward, diving straight into the center of the Crimson Fleet. The move seemed suicidal, bringing the human ship into point-blank range of dozens of enemy vessels. But Taemin knew his ship could take the damage, at least for the few seconds he needed. The human warship pushed through the Velkari formation, its metamaterial hull absorbing hit after hit. Drones swarmed around it, providing cover, destroying any ship that got too close. The Indomitable closed to within 5 kilometers of the Domination's edge, Velcran Prime's flagship. "Fire," Taemin ordered. The EMP cannon discharged. An invisible wave of electromagnetic energy washed over the Velkari flagship. Every energy-based system aboard the Domination's edge immediately failed. Shields collapsed. Weapons powered down. Propulsion systems went dead. Life support flickered and died. Emergency lighting activated, casting the interior of the ship in dim red illumination, but even that began to fade as backup power systems failed. On the bridge of the Domination's edge, Lord Velcran Prime clutched his command throne as the ship went dark around him. His officers shouted in panic, trying to restore systems, but nothing responded. The ship was dead in space, powerless and helpless. Through the viewport, he watched the rest of his fleet. Some ships were trying to flee, their formation breaking apart as captains made the individual decision to save their own vessels, rather than continue a losing battle. Other ships were already destroyed, reduced to debris fields. Still others drifted without power, victims of the drone swarms or the automated platforms. Of the 43 ships he had brought into the asteroid belt, only 17 remained functional, and most of those were fleeing. In less than 15 minutes, the Crimson Fleet had been shattered. A communication channel opened, using old-fashioned radio waves that still worked despite the electromagnetic pulse. Captain Taemin's voice filled the bridge. The Indomitable raced through space at maximum speed, its antimatter engines burning at full capacity. Behind it, 300 Velkari warships gave chase. The human vessel was fast, faster than any ship the Velkari had encountered before, but it couldn't maintain this speed forever. Captain Taemin stood on the bridge, his hands gripping the railing in front of his command chair. His knuckles were white from the pressure. Around him, his crew worked in focused silence, each person knowing that their survival depended on perfect execution of their duties. Distance to Earth? Taman asked. 4 days at current speed, Ensign Minji replied. But Captain, the reactors are showing stress. Lieutenant Daehyun says we're operating beyond safe parameters. From his engineering station, Daehyun looked up. The antimatter containment fields are stable for now, but we took damage during the battle. Nothing critical, but if we keep pushing this hard, we risk a containment breach. If that happens, the explosion will vaporize the ship. Taman nodded. Can you give me 3 days at this speed? Daehyun ran calculations on his console. 3 days, yes. Maybe 3.5. After that, we need to reduce power or risk catastrophic failure. That'll have to be enough. Minji, did you reach Admiral Jiwon? Yes, Captain. She's on the secure channel. The view screen activated, showing Admiral Jiwon's face. She looked older than she had just days ago, the stress of command showing in the lines around her eyes. Behind her, Taman could see the underground command center beneath the Himalayan mountains, filled with officers working at stations, monitoring the situation. Captain Taman, Jiwon said, I've been watching the sensor data. You destroyed half the Crimson Fleet. That's an impressive victory. It won't matter if we can't stop what's coming next, Taman replied. 300 ships, Admiral. Our defense line can't handle that many. We expended most of our ammunition on the first engagement. I know, but you bought us time, and time is what we needed. The Stellar Lance is operational. Dr. Sung-ho completed the final test 6 hours ago. We're ready to implement Protocol Omega. Taman felt relief wash over him. What do you need from us? Lead them to Earth. We want them to see our homeworld, to see how many people live here, to understand what they're threatening to destroy. Then we'll show them the Lance. We'll demonstrate its power on an uninhabited target. If the Valkyrie have any sense of self-preservation, they'll negotiate rather than risk mutual destruction. And if they don't? Taman asked. Jiwon's expression hardened. Then we show them we're not bluffing. We target one of their colony worlds, not the main population centers, but a military installation, something that proves we can reach them anywhere in the galaxy. We make the cost of conquering Earth so high that they'll choose peace instead. Taman understood the strategy. Humanity couldn't win a prolonged war against an empire that controlled 17 star systems. But they could make themselves too expensive to conquer. They could turn this into a war where nobody wins. And sometimes the threat of mutual destruction was more powerful than any weapon. I'll bring them to Earth, Taman said. But Admiral, what about the people in the cities? If the Valkyrie decide to bombard the planet before we can demonstrate the Lance, the evacuation shelters are ready. We've been preparing for this possibility since first contact. The shelters can hold 2 billion people, and they're buried deep enough to survive anything short of a planet-killer weapon. It won't save everyone, but it'll save most of humanity if the worst happens. The transmission ended. Taman turned to find Commander Heejin watching him. She had been his second in command for 8 years, had served with him through conflicts with pirates in the outer colonies, had become his closest friend aboard the ship. She knew him well enough to read his expression. You're worried, she said quietly. We're betting everything on the belief that the Valkyrie are logical, Taman replied, that they'll choose survival over pride. But what if they're not? What if they decide to destroy Earth just to prove they can? Hyejin moved closer, lowering her voice so only he could hear. Then we make sure they remember humanity. We make sure they understand that even if they destroy Earth, we'll hunt them across the stars. We'll spend generations tracking them down and making them pay. Fear is a powerful motivator, Captain. Sometimes it's more effective than weapons. The journey to Earth took 4 days, and those days were the longest of Taman's life. The crew worked in rotating shifts, eating meals at their stations, sleeping in short intervals when exhaustion forced them to rest. The ship's doctor, Dr. Yuna, moved through the corridors administering stimulants to crew members who needed to stay alert beyond their normal limits. Behind them, the Valkyrie fleet maintained pursuit. They didn't try to close the distance, didn't waste energy attempting to catch a ship that was clearly faster than theirs. They simply followed, patient and relentless, like wolves tracking wounded prey. On the second day, Taman received a personal message from his wife Yunji. She and their daughter Nari were in Shelter Complex 7, deep beneath the mountains of what used to be called Korea. The message was brief, recorded from the cramped quarters of the shelter. Yunji appeared on screen holding Nari in her lap. Their daughter was 7 years old, with bright eyes and a curious smile. "Papa," Nari said, waving at the camera. "Mama says you're fighting bad aliens. Are you going to beat them?" Taman felt his throat tighten. He wanted to reach through the screen and hold them both, to promise that everything would be okay, to protect them from the danger that was coming. Yoonji spoke next. "We're safe here, Taman. Don't worry about us. We have food, water, and there are thousands of other families here. Nari thinks it's an adventure. She doesn't understand the danger, and I'm grateful for that." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "Whatever you have to do, we trust you. Come home to us." Taman recorded a response, keeping his voice steady. "I'll come home. I promise. Take care of each other. I love you both." On the third day, Lieutenant Daehyun reported that the reactor stress was becoming critical. "We need to reduce speed soon, Captain. Within the next 12 hours, or we risk containment failure." "How far to Earth?" Taman asked. Minji checked her navigation console. 20 hours at current speed. "If we reduce power now, it'll take us 30 hours. Taman made a decision. Maintain current speed for 11 more hours, then reduce to safe parameters. That'll get us close enough to Earth's defensive perimeter." "Captain, that's cutting it very close," Daehyun warned. "I know, but we need to buy as much time as possible for Earth's preparations. Every hour counts." On the fourth day, Earth appeared on the long-range sensors, that beautiful blue and green sphere covered in swirling white clouds, home to 8 billion humans and countless other species. Taman had seen Earth from space hundreds of times, but it had never looked more precious than it did now. The Indomitable crossed into Earth's defensive perimeter, a region of space monitored by satellites and weapons platforms. The ship reduced speed as its damaged reactors finally got a respite from the punishment they had endured. Behind them, the Valkyrie fleet arrived. 300 ships emerged into the solar system and took up positions around Earth. They formed a sphere, completely surrounding the planet, their weapons aimed downward. Aboard the lead ship, the Eternal Dominion, Grand Admiral Velkara studied the tactical displays. She was different from her brother Velkran Prime. Where he was arrogant and impulsive, she was calculating and patient. She had spent her career studying warfare, understanding that the best victories were won before the first shot was fired. Her chief strategist, Commander Velkoros, approached her command throne. "Grand Admiral, we have Earth in our sights. We can begin orbital bombardment whenever you command." Velkara held up a hand. "Wait, I want to understand what we're facing." "The humans destroyed the Crimson Fleet with hidden weapons and tactics we didn't anticipate. They're clever, and clever enemies don't reveal all their capabilities at once. They're expecting us. They're prepared for this moment. The question is, what have they prepared?" She opened a communication channel to Earth. "This is Grand Admiral Velkara of the Valkyrie Empire. I am authorized to negotiate on behalf of the Imperial Council. Humanity has 1 hour to respond with unconditional surrender, or we will begin destroying your cities." The response came from Admiral Jiwon. "Grand Admiral, I am Admiral Jiwon of the United Earth Defense Council. We will not surrender, but we will give you a demonstration of why attacking Earth would be a mistake you'll regret for generations. Threats are meaningless against this fleet." Velkara replied. "This is not a threat. This is a warning. Watch carefully." Across the solar system, near the orbit of Neptune, a massive asteroid began to move. The asteroid was Ceres, the largest object in the asteroid belt, and it had been completely hollowed out and converted into a weapon. The stellar lance powered up, its fusion reactors feeding enormous amounts of energy into the magnetic accelerator that ran through its core. A targeting laser locked onto Io, one of Jupiter's moons. The moon was covered in active volcanoes, completely lifeless, chosen specifically because its destruction would harm no living beings. The stellar lance fired. A tungsten-jacketed projectile weighing 10,000 tons accelerated to 90% of light speed. Silence filled the bridge of the Eternal Dominion as Grand Admiral Velkara processed what she had just witnessed. A moon destroyed in seconds, not damaged, not cracked, but completely vaporized. The energy required for such a weapon was beyond anything the Valkyrie Empire possessed. Commander Velkoros spoke quietly. "Grand Admiral, if they can do that to a moon, they can do it to our planets, our colonies, our homeworld." Velkara's mind raced through calculations. The Valkyrie Empire controlled 17 star systems with 23 inhabited planets. Each planet held billions of her people. If the humans could launch those projectiles at near light speed, There would be no defense. Energy shields wouldn't help. Point defense weapons couldn't track something moving that fast. Evacuation would be impossible. She opened a private channel to Captain Taman. Human Captain, you've made your point. But destroying an uninhabited moon is different from standing against 300 warships. If we attack, can you truly stop us? Taman's voice came through calm and steady. Admiral, you're asking the wrong question. The question isn't whether we can stop you from destroying Earth. We probably can't. But if you attack us, we won't fight defensively. We'll launch every weapon we have at your colony worlds. We'll target your planets, your stations, your fleets. This will become a war where both our species die. Are you willing to accept that cost? Velkara understood immediately. The humans were offering mutual destruction, not as a threat but as a simple statement of fact. If this war continued, nobody would win. She looked at her tactical display showing the 300 ships under her command. A massive force, enough to conquer most civilizations, but against an enemy willing to sacrifice everything, numbers meant nothing. I need time to consult with the Imperial Council, Velkara said. You have 1 hour. Admiral Jiwan's voice cut in. After that, we'll assume you've chosen war and will act accordingly. The channel closed. Velkara turned to her communication officer. Open a quantum link to the Imperial Council. Priority 1. I need to speak with them immediately. The council meeting took place across vast distances. The members scattered throughout Velkari space but connected through quantum communication. 7 council members appeared as holographic projections around Velkara's command throne. These were the rulers of the Velkari Empire, individuals who had guided their civilization for centuries. Velkara presented her situation clearly. The humans possess planet-destroying weapons. They have proven they can use them. If we proceed with the conquest of Earth, they will retaliate against our worlds. This will not be a simple conquest. This will be mutual annihilation. One council member, an elderly Velkari named Velthos, spoke with a voice like grinding ice. We cannot show weakness. If we back down from primitives, other species will think they can challenge us. Another council member, Veliana, disagreed. Velthos, these humans are not primitives. They defeated the Crimson Fleet. They built weapons we didn't know were possible. They planned for this confrontation while letting us believe they were weak. That's not primitive. That's strategic genius. The debate continued for several minutes, voices rising as the council members argued. Some wanted to proceed with the attack, believing the humans were bluffing. Others counseled caution, pointing out that the Velkari Empire had grown through calculated conquest, not reckless war. Finally, the eldest council member, Velkrath, raised his hand for silence. He was over 400 years old, his crystalline body dimmed with age, but his mind remained sharp. Grand Admiral Velkara, answer me honestly. Can we defeat humanity without losing multiple colony worlds? Velkara considered lying, then decided against it. These council members deserved the truth. No, honored elder. Even if we destroy Earth, the humans have hidden weapons throughout their solar system. They'll launch everything they have at our nearest colonies before they die. We'll lose millions, possibly billions of our people. And for what? To conquer one planet out of pride? Velkrath nodded slowly. Then we negotiate. Pride is worth nothing if it costs us our civilization. Contact the humans. Tell them we're willing to discuss terms. The council meeting ended. Velkara took a moment to compose herself, then opened a channel to Earth. Admiral Jiwan's face appeared on screen, and beside her stood Captain Taman, who had returned to Earth aboard the Indomitable. Admiral Jiwan, Captain Taman, Velkara began. I am authorized to negotiate on behalf of the Velkari Empire. We propose an armistice and formal peace talks. Jiwan exchanged a glance with Taman before responding. We accept, but the talks will take place at a neutral location, not aboard your ships or on Earth. We'll construct a station at the midpoint between our territories. Agreed, Velkara said, but I have one question. The weapon you demonstrated. Can you truly build more of them? Can you truly target our worlds across interstellar distances? Taman answered, his voice steady. Grand Admiral, the Stellar Lance took 5 years to build and required the conversion of our largest asteroid. We currently have enough ammunition for exactly 2 more shots before we'd need to spend months reloading. But you don't know that for certain, do you? You don't know how many weapons we've hidden, how many platforms we've built, how many ships we've constructed in secret. And that uncertainty is what will keep the peace, Velkara understood. The humans had won not through superior firepower, but through superior psychology. They had made the Velkari afraid of the unknown, afraid of hidden weapons and secret capabilities. Fear was proving more effective than any fleet. 2 weeks later, a neutral space station floated in the empty space between Earth and the nearest Velkhari colony. The station had been built quickly, a simple structure with meeting rooms, living quarters, and docking bays for both human and Velkhari ships. Captain Taman and Commander Hyejin represented humanity. Grand Admiral Velkara and Commander Velkoros represented the Velkhari Empire. The four of them sat in a conference room with a large window showing the stars beyond. The negotiations lasted for 3 days. Both sides made demands, offered compromises, and slowly worked toward an agreement. Taman found himself respecting Velkara's intelligence and pragmatism. She wasn't like her brother Velkran Prime. She understood that sometimes the best victory was avoiding war entirely. On the final day, they reached an agreement. Earth and its entire solar system would be recognized as sovereign territory. Humanity would be granted status as an independent power, not a subject species. In exchange, humanity would share certain non-military technologies with the Velkhari, medical advances that could help both species, agricultural techniques that could feed more people with less resources. But the most important clause in the treaty was the Mutual Defense Pact. If either species was attacked by a third party, the other would provide military assistance. This transformed former enemies into reluctant allies. Taman signed the treaty document, his hand steady despite the weight of what he was doing. This single signature represented the culmination of 6 months of conflict, thousands of deaths and the near destruction of 2 civilizations. Velkara signed next, her crystalline finger leaving a glowing mark on the document. She looked at Taman. "Captain, I must admit something. When we first met, I thought your species was insignificant. I underestimated you just as my brother did. That was our mistake." "We counted on that mistake," Taman replied honestly. "We studied your empire and realized that you had grown comfortable with easy victories. You expected other species to fight the way you fought. Energy weapons against energy shields, large fleets in open space, honorable combat. But humans don't fight that way. We fight to win using whatever advantages we can find." "A harsh lesson," Velkara said, "but perhaps a necessary one." The Velkhari Empire had become arrogant. We needed to remember that we're not invincible. 6 months after the treaty was signed, the Indomitable underwent extensive repairs in Earth orbit. New armor plating replaced the damaged sections. The antimatter reactors were rebuilt and upgraded. The weapon systems were restocked and improved. Captain Taman stood on the observation deck with his crew. Commander Hyejin, Lieutenant Daehyun, Ensign Minji, and Dr. Yuna all stood beside him, watching construction crews work on other ships. Earth shipyards were busy building new vessels. Not just warships, but exploration ships and trading vessels too. "Things are changing," Hyejin observed. 6 months ago we were alone. Now we have allies. Strange how war brought us together." Taman nodded. "Fear brought us together. Both sides realized that mutual destruction benefits nobody. Now we have a chance to build something better. Trade, cultural exchange, cooperation." Daehyun grinned. "And if another hostile species shows up, we have the Velkhari fleet backing us. That's a nice insurance policy." They watched the construction for a while longer, then Taman excused himself. He had somewhere important to be. He took a shuttle down to Earth's surface, landing at the military spaceport near Seoul. From there, a ground transport carried him to his home, a modest apartment in a residential district. The building had been evacuated during the crisis, but people had returned once the treaty was signed. Taman entered his apartment and found Unji in the kitchen preparing dinner. She looked up as he entered and her face broke into a smile. "You're home early. I thought you'd be working late again."